Watch this.
Sometimes technology can take us into the future, but in the case of the United Health pharmacy hack, well, we're back to the old days of writing paper scripts, but nobody is sure for how long. If you were banking on being a social media influencer, well, you might need to change your career path. TikTok may be on the chopping block in America, and that has Idaho's congressional delegation hitting the like button. Idaho is rejoining the Navy. This weekend, the latest nuclear-powered submarine will be christened by the U.S. Navy. It won't be the first time the USS Idaho will sail the seven seas. Well, if you've had some recent problems with prescriptions or communication between your insurance and healthcare providers, you might want to check on who's housing your digital medical records. A cyber attack froze Change Healthcare last month, a popular electronic data and records program that is used across the country. The Idaho Hospital Association says the attack is impacting hospitals even here across the state of Idaho. In some cases, they have members that can't get the computer program to process anything. Andrew Bartline shows the critical impact of this attack in the Gem State.
Some technological advances in healthcare hardly ever surface for the customer.
We could, yeah.
Picking up a prescription is rather analog. The back end is anything but.
Submitting prescriptions or accessing patient data. It's an electronic system that houses all of that.
And Greg Morrison?
We have 51 hospitals.
He knows
statewide.
The systems to be susceptible.
Yeah. Had a cyber attack on it and was shut down.
The target? United Health Group. And their subsidiary, Change Healthcare.
A whole range of impacts to our members statewide.
Just like the namesake, nothing's been the same since.
When we're submitting claims to Medicare for reimbursement or prescriptions, we can't submit that electronically. We have to submit that by paper. And so there's a pretty huge delay in that. And so now we're seeing financial impacts. We're not getting those reimbursements back for those claims that we are trying to submit.
How far back did this set us?
Oh gosh, I'd say this set us back decades, quite frankly.
Like any industry, time's synonymous with money. Some hospitals, pharmacies, and clinics are short reimbursement costs of up to 90 cents on each dollar.
It's been a struggle, especially for our smaller, more rural hospitals, just because they're not as equipped from a staffing and resources standpoint.
How does this fall onto the customer then?
We're trying to just deal with the paperwork on the back end when we can and how we can. So it shouldn't impact the patient directly.
So then that means that there are hospitals and pharmacies that are just taking a big financial hit right now.
And we expect that they will be made whole further on down the line, but how far down the line do we have to go before that happens?
Government health care, including Medicare and Medicaid, have tried to get ahead of the problem. They've started accepting advance payments and offered advanced reimbursement.
So we can defray some of that financial hit.
But there's no rhyme or reason to cyber attacks designed only for disruption.
Bad actors out there.
Their success is based on how long the industry bleeds. And they're in desperate need of a tourniquet.
I don't know that it gets easier with time. Our members' number one goal is to take care of patients and provide them the quality care that they're used to. And they're going to continue to do that no matter what happens. But these nefarious characters out there are going to find a way to get in, and you just have to do everything you can to protect yourself from that exposure.
Typically, there's two types of large-scale cyber attacks. One is when that information is held for ransom. The attackers simply want money. But the second is when the attackers only want to cause problems. That's often when a foreign government's involved, and reports up to this point suggest that this is the latter. Hospital systems cannot just buy themselves out of it. And we've been working, Brian, to get the story of a small pharmacy, a local practice who's been impacted by it. And we're working on that. I did get a text message today from a group. It's not just Medicare and Medicaid. When you combine them, it's called Molina, but separately it's an issue. It's also St. Luke's Health Plan, Blue Cross, TRICARE, and Pacific Source.
Wow.
And that's just for that practice. I don't know if it's different as you go to other places, but even private insurance, they're having problems getting those payments through and those reimbursements.
And I wonder if that's going to cause problems for those trying to get some of those that require IDs, you know, the Oxycontin kind of stuff, any of those drugs that are, require a little bit more security.
Yeah, and then it'd be a problem on the customer, too. If your
Right.
private insurance isn't able to get the communication through, you're probably going to pay more. With Medicare and Medicaid, it's a matter of the hospitals getting their money back.
Yeah.
So it's impacting a lot of people, a lot of different ways. There's more work to be done on it, for sure.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. Keep up to date with that one. Well, the latest library bill seems to be moving with the speed of, well, the North Fork and the Payette River in mid-spring. Monday, House Bill 710 shot out of the State Affairs Committee like it was running staircase, and today it found itself skipping a step to get to a full debate on the House floor. House Bill 710 is the resurfacing of the first library bill this session that sunk on the House floor when they sent it back to committee. Well, this new one still identifies any material containing homosexuality as harmful to minors, but it also includes a partial description of the three-pronged Miller test, which the U.S. Supreme Court deemed as what determines obscenity. Opponents of House Bill 710 point out that it left out that third prong, the part that talks about the work the work taken as a whole lacks value, but those in favor say, well, this seems to be a problem. And here's what this bill does. A parent or child finds a book in the kids section of their local library and they find it offensive. Well, they fill out a form to have it moved. The library then has 30 days to move it, or they can just keep it where it is, believing they have it put and located in the proper section. If they don't move it, a parent can then take the library to court for $250.
That's it. I think it's pretty reasonable. We didn't have the 30-day opportunity in the last bill. That's a good provision that we've put in there. If something is questionable inside your community, your local community, move the book.
But as Representative Dan Garner pointed out, this hasn't been a problem for most libraries. And if that problem should come up, or has it come up, there's already a way to handle it.
This is a local government issue. It is overreach by the state government. There was a time not too long ago when the Republican Party put a big emphasis on local governance. I don't know, it's still in the platform, but they don't seem to care about it much anymore.
There are times where local control happens and we don't have to make it a statewide problem. But when you have multiple counties, multiple cities coming forward with the same problem, that's where the state then has to step in.
So the state is now 3 steps away from stepping in. It'd be a Senate committee, a full Senate passage, and a governor's signature. It's been pointed out several times, House Bill 710 is a far cry from last year's library bill, which threatened jail time for librarians and stiff fines for libraries. And perhaps that's why Representative Brent Crane, the brother of the bill's sponsor, Representative Jaron Crane, and whose committee these bills keep coming out of, perhaps that's why he used previous attempts at a library bill as a threat on the House floor.
I can tell you, if this doesn't pass, we're going back to that bill. This issue is going to get solved one way or the other. You better pick which one you like. To sit there and say that this does not exist in Idaho libraries is patently false.
Several librarians have testified that this isn't happening in Idaho's libraries. Meanwhile, House Bill 710 sailed through the House 47-23. Meanwhile, House Bill 441 passed the Senate floor today with a lot of support. Bill wants to rewrite Idaho's drug paraphernalia law, so fentanyl testing strips, so they're not considered drug paraphernalia. House Bill 441 is now headed to the governor's desk awaiting his signature. Well, yesterday, House Bill 447 on the parental choice tax credit bill, that's the one that died in committee. The bill would have provided a refundable tax credit for up to $5,000 per student per family, or $7,500 for special education students for families that they can spend on education expenses. It would include tuition for K-12 private schools in this bill. And well, after that bill failed, when we talked about this yesterday, one of you sent us a question, an interesting one, because they were concerned about the monetary value of this. This school bill, 447, it paid families $5,000 per child. They were wondering how much public schools receive per student right now. Is it $5,000? If not, won't be giving out more money to fund private education than the state does right now? Would that put us in a hole? That's a separate question entirely, because most say if we go this route, yes, it would put the state in the hole. But when it comes to per student spending, the most recent data we have from the National Education Association is for the school year of 2021-2022. That data shows Idaho remains in last place when it comes to per student spending, but it's still not as low as $5,000 per student. The national average sits a little more than $15,000 per student. Idaho spends a little more than $9,000, $9,046 per student. far behind the nearly $29,000 New York spends and the $25,000 per student spent by Vermont. There is good news in this, though. During the 2020-2021 school year, per student spending in Idaho is just over $8,000. So it's gone up a bit, despite being far behind the national average, increasing just a little, still in last place. The U.S. House voted to ban TikTok in the United States if the social media platform doesn't distance itself from its parent company. Legislators on both sides of the aisle have sounded the alarm. The popular video sharing app is a national security threat. The bill, currently making its way through Congress, gives TikTok about 5 months to separate from the China-based ByteDance, or app stores in the U.S. would be banned from hosting it on their platforms. TikTok has mounted an aggressive lobbying campaign to kill this bill, arguing it would violate First Amendment rights of its 170 million U.S. users and harm thousands of small businesses, influencers, and content creators that rely on it for income. Idaho's congressional delegation, well, they disagree with that take. Congressman Mike Simpson did not vote on that bill today because his spokesperson tells us he had a previously scheduled medical procedure, but he is in good health, high spirits, and he is pleased to see the bipartisan bill protecting Americans from foreign adversary-controlled applications. He's happy that passed the House. It's a bill he would have supported were he on the floor. Congressman Russ Fulcher, he did vote yes, but we haven't yet heard back as to an explanation as to why. Senator Jim Risch, well, he's about to get that bill in front of him. It's heading over to the Senate. He has long voiced concerns about TikTok, given the CCP's ability to control the app, he says. And he voiced those concerns, according to his office, specifically emphasizing the ability to influence children in a letter he sent to the FTC back in July. Senator Mike Crapo's spokesperson said Crapo will review any final legislation on the Senate floor before casting his vote, so we don't know which way he's leaning, whether he supports the bill or not. The bill now heads to the Senate, as we said, where it faces an uncertain fate. Majority Leader Schumer hasn't said when that vote will take place in the Senate, and if it does, well, President Joe Biden has said if it reaches his desk, he will sign it into law. Well, the showdown between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump for who gets to be called former this time around seems set. Both are assured of their respective party nominations. And Idaho had a little bit of a hand in that when it comes to the Republican side. A couple weeks ago, the Republican Party held its presidential caucus election. And as we mentioned before on this show, only about 6% of registered Republicans showed up, likely because, well, it happened only during a few hours on a Saturday. But for the people who did make it, former President Donald Trump was the clear winner, getting 85% of that vote. So now the attention turns to the state-run primary elections happening on May 21st. And there's a deadline if you want to participate in that, despite the Idaho GOP's best attempts to force the Secretary of State to require voters and candidates to affiliate with the Republican Party by the end of December of last year. That deadline is actually this Friday. If you want to vote in the closed Republican primary, you have to file by this Friday, or I should say you have to change your affiliation or at least register by this Friday. Anyone wanting to run as a candidate in that primary or declare their party affiliation also has that deadline of Friday. Unaffiliated, unregistered voters can still register and affiliate with a party on Election Day. During the primary election, voters will decide things like state legislators. Lawmakers are on the line. County sheriffs, prosecutors, and commissioners are all up for grabs.
I knew that Idaho had potatoes. I knew the Smurf turf.
State horse?
State horse is the Appaloosa.
Appaloosa. The Appaloosa?
Good one. Did you know that we have a state vegetable?
The state vegetable, would it be the sugar beet?
No. The potato.
The potato? I thought it would have been obvious.
What might not be obvious, if I told you Idaho has a long history and connection to the U.S. Navy, you might be wondering, how's that possible? Are we a landlocked state? What big boats besides those cargo ships in Lewiston ever see the state of Idaho? Well, Idaho carries a lot of weight for that branch of the military, mostly because of our nuclear facility and a very deep lake up in the Panhandle. But the name is also a well-known entity. You may have noticed the logo on those Submariner shirts, members of the crew of the USS Idaho. We spoke with them nearly 3 years ago, asking them, well, what they knew about their namesake. U.S. Navy's newest Virginia-class submarine, that's a nuclear-powered submarine, will be formally christened and named the USS Idaho this weekend in Connecticut. But this won't be the first time that's happened. 4 naval vessels have carried the name Idaho going back more than a century and a half. The Gem State's initial tour in the U.S. Navy began before Idaho even became a state in the Union. The USS Idaho, named for the territory created in 1863, was a wooden steam sloop. Commissioned on April 2, 1866, it set to sea under Captain John Warden, who oversaw a mostly foreign-born crew. However, at first, the Navy didn't want the Idaho. She wasn't fast enough. But when they added the sails, she was able to let loose. In fact, on a passage to Japan in 1868, the Idaho reached speeds of more than 18 knots, making her one of the fastest sailing ships of her day. But on the trip back across the Pacific in 1869, her sails and hull were damaged by a typhoon. The USS Idaho remained in Japan until she was decommissioned in 1873. Another 35 years would pass before Idaho's brand would bridge the broadside of a boat, this time as a Mississippi-class battleship. Now a full-fledged state, this USS Idaho was commissioned on April 1, 1908, with Captain James Meredith Helm, well, at the helm. She would spend some time in Central America, England, and France before being sold to Greece in 1914. The third USS Idaho, a little less of a charming life. She was a wooden motorboat, assigned to patrol the Philly and Jersey shores. That Idaho would last only a year, from 1917 to 1918. By that time, the world was at war, and Idaho would once again be assigned to a battleship. The New Mexico-class craft was commissioned in 1919 in New Jersey. Originally part of the Pacific Fleet, the fourth USS Idaho actually spent time at Pearl Harbor in 1940. But she was in Iceland on that fateful day in December 1941. The largest battleship on the water at the time, the USS Idaho headed to the Pacific 2 days later. Her service during World War II would earn her 7 battle stars.
The USS Idaho played a very key role in World War II. Was at the Battle of Iwo Jima and provided fire support and was part of the success of the Battle of Iwo Jima.
In April of 1945, she was assigned to a bombardment station off Okinawa, also providing major fire support for that invasion. Then later that year, in September, the crew of the USS Idaho celebrated the surrender of Japan in Tokyo Bay while listening to the band on the fantail. That moment commemorated on the back of that picture. The rockets and searchlights were used for other reasons that night, the night that we received the news that the war had ended. The fourth USS Idaho was decommissioned on July 3rd, 1946.
Unfortunately, there has not been a ship named Idaho since then, which is kind of sad in some way because Idaho has such a rich Navy tradition.
Well, that changes very soon. There are other Idaho connections to the U.S. Navy, and we're going to talk about those over the next several days. But coming up this weekend, the christening of the USS Idaho. There are 5 major steps for ships to become part of the naval fleet, and it takes years. The first would be the naming, which happened in 2015. The second, the keel-laying ceremony, marking the beginning of the construction of the vessel. That happened in August of 2020. The third, that's the christening. That's this Saturday in Connecticut. Then it's going to be followed by a year of sea trials to make sure USS Idaho floats. And then there's going to be a commissioning ceremony to officially enter the USS Idaho into the Navy fleet. And we're going to have a crew in Connecticut. That'd be Andrew Bartline and Kevin Esslinger. They're going to be there to cover that christening beginning on Friday.
will be rounding out the official winter season with some pretty spring-like temperatures. We'll be seeing more sunshine as we go throughout the next few days, and really all the way through next week we'll be seeing temperatures warm and even things trend a little drier all the way through Wednesday when we start to see a low pressure center drift into the region. But for right now, we do have a low pressure across the state that will continue to migrate to the east, making way for all this sunshine and the warming temperatures that come with a high pressure center. So as we go into tomorrow and we start this warming trend, you can see for Treasure Valley spots, we may get close to 60 degrees, cooler over in the Magic Valley and still some breezy conditions there. The mountains, again, expecting things to be a little bit cooler and some more sunshine. But you saw the 60-degree mark for some Treasure Valley spots. Typically for Boise, we see the first 60-degree day on March 4th. Now we've already had several 60-degree days in late January and early February, so we've already hit that mark. But last year we did set a record for the latest 60-degree day, and it capped off a trend where we were well below 60 degrees for a record 157 days. So temperatures will be warming up throughout your 7-day forecast. You can see really nice weekend ahead, and of course, lots of sunshine too.
Several comments today about the library bill passing the House, now headed over to the Senate side of the State House. This one says, again, the library issue, this isn't an issue. Come on, Crane, do real work. Stop tilting at windmills. A lot like this one, too. Sounds like the threats by Mr. Crane to other legislators is a questionable way to influence a vote on the floor and a good example of why one-party rule in our state is dangerous, says Steve. Why are the Cranes so worried about libraries? Have either of them done any single thing about property tax relief, grocery tax relief? Quit making up problems to be outraged about and get some real work done. Or better yet, just sine die and go home, says Ryan in Meridian. Both Cranes said on the House floor today they have had people come up to them from their district in Nampa and say that this is a problem in Nampa. Lots of other legislators stood up and said it isn't a problem in their district, that this should be handled on a local level. The argument was it's not, so this is where they step in. Library book ban gives a match to the most intolerant of us. Homosexuality is in the Bible, nature books, dictionaries, and cross-dressing is in Shakespeare. Are these up for grabs as well? Asked Tony from Boise. It's a good question. Not sure. You just got to find it objectionable, I guess. Does every state have a USS? That's a good question. I looked it up. Every state but Montana has had one, and right now it looks like there are 36 states that have a currently commissioned vessel in the Navy named after them. They're all named after states. Montana, the only one that doesn't have anything or hasn't had anything. They had 2 try, but they were canceled during construction. So there you go. Sorry, Montana. We'll see you tomorrow.